So, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Sunset Safari. My name is Jamie, and this afternoon on camera with me, I have the Art Fark Andrew, and we also have Nikki and Lou in FC. So, a really exciting morning this morning. There was some great action at the hyena den with James, and he had some wonderful early herds, but I also spent about 3 hours with Scott, who was taking the sunrise safari, tracking what turned out to be Kunuma, and we found him right at the end of the drive, just here at Buffels Hook Dam. So if you are joining us for the first time, this is a live safari. We are on Juma Game Reserve in the Sabi Sands, and it's also interactive, so you can send through your comments or your questions on hashtag Safari Live on Twitter, or to questions@wildearth.tv. So very exciting stuff. This afternoon, Scott and I have decided that we are going to both go and look for Kunuma for a little bit this afternoon, and Scott is out on the other vehicle with Jeandre as his cameraman, so they are out and about. We've just returned to the last place that Kunuma was seen, which is here at Buffels Hook. It is a very warm afternoon, the hottest since I've been here. It is 31 degrees centigrade, which is 91 Fahrenheit, which I'm really hoping is spelling the end of our winter, although I have been caught out before and there's always the odd, but it is nice and hot. Luckily there's a bit of wind to take away the bite of that heat and to hopefully blow away some of the flies that are hanging about. So there is no sign of Kunuma at the moment. I have done a quick drive through the dam just to see where he was last seen, but we are going to slowly make our way along a fantastic job of finally finding him right at the end. So for those of you who have been missing him, I do have some very good news. Brent is back with us, and mysteriously, as you might have noticed, my hat returned from a holiday at exactly the same time. I'm not necessarily drawing any connection between the two. I'm just pointing out that coincidence. So Nikki has got her hat back, and I've got my cap, which potentially isn't as flattering, but definitely stays on far better. And Brent will be back with you guys tomorrow afternoon, as far as I know, for tomorrow afternoon's sunset safari. So those of you who have been missing him, fear not. He will be back with you shortly. Hopes about the wind keeping the flies away were a little bit unfounded. They are definitely around us at the moment. So Scott is off walking in this side of the drainage line off to my left. So hopefully we can catch this leopard together, or at least locate this leopard together. So we had a question from a viewer who was watching yesterday, and Jay about 4.5 feet. Yes, about 4.5 feet for those of you who work not in the metric system. But don't quote me on that because my conversions aren't fantastic. And then we've got the purple heron just a little bit lower with the yellow legs. And slightly shorter, just under a meter or just under 3 feet. And then just a bit lower, the grey heron, which is also around a meter or just under. And then the black-headed heron, which is also around a meter in height, so 3 feet. And as we can see, if we look at the distribution maps, they are all highlighted in green, which is this sort of general area. So we've all sort of right in the northeastern corner of the country. So it could be any one of those four, and without seeing it myself, I'm not sure which one you saw. But if you can let me know which one you think it looks like, or who your guide was, then maybe we can narrow it down and just possibly figure it out for you. At the moment, those are the options that I'm thinking of. You can let me know, and please send us through your feedback, because it would be great to know, and I'd love to. I haven't seen any of the different heron species apart from the grey heron while I've been here, but I'm sure that there are others. So let me know what you think, and maybe we can come up with a better answer for you and narrow it down. Okay, but we must not get distracted from our current task, which is trying to relocate Numa. And I know that Scott checked the northern boundary fairly carefully to see if he had crossed, so we probably would have picked up on that from that side. So he could well still be in this block. Oh, and it's just a hyena track that was fooling me. So I'm hoping that he might have popped out onto the road somewhere here. And at the moment, I'm checking very carefully around me into the more shaded areas, because, as I said before, it is compared to the last few days that we've had, blisteringly hot. And personally, I'm loving it because it's never too hot for me, and I don't like the cold. So I think this is wonderful weather. But Kanuma might be tucked away under the shade of a tree. I did actually get to see him this morning, just after we finished with the sunrise safari. So but I didn't see him too clearly, so I'm not too sure how hungry he was looking. Maybe
to see him much anymore, but he was, along with his brother, two of the main leopards that we saw over basically November, December, January, February, March, and then come about April, May, I think they started to move further and further afield, and no, we haven't been seeing them as much, sadly, but we have been able to keep rough tabs on them because they have been seen elsewhere in the Sabi Sands, further to the south and to the east of us. The flies are out in full force this afternoon. Which is why I will be continually pushing my hands past my ears. Now, on a hot day like this, I'd be inclined to think that the leopard hasn't moved too far. But you never can tell, especially with young males. They are no different to, I guess, the young male human. They can often break the norms, and they have it are hard to follow. I'm confident he isn't too far away, even if he did continue to move a fair distance. I think he is still trackable and findable. I'm guessing at the moment he's going to be lying up in a deep shady spot, which will make seeing him difficult, especially because this area where he headed into has a network of small riverbeds, and I wouldn't want to startle him at close quarters in one of these riverbeds. So it's slow going when you're searching for him in this kind of a terrain. And it also quite simply means that he may lie hidden in cover, backing his camouflage, backing his ability to disappear into the shadows, and allow us to walk just meters past him. And as long as I don't see him, he'll continue to lie there. As soon as I see him, he'll either charge me or more likely run away. But they can be very bold and back their camouflage, which means there is a strong chance. I've already walked past him this afternoon, and he just lay there looking at us. We drove in here earlier and did a short walk about 100 meters south of this, so further down this little riverbed we're approaching. So what I may do now is stop and listen here for a moment, and then do another walk. He may have already made it further up this little riverbed. I'm inclined to want to look under this little cave. Let's have a look under here. It's a nice cool spot. Imagine if he is lying in the shade of this little cave. No luck, but that would have been nice if he was just lying in that shady corner. Jamie, I've checked extensively on the northern side of the dam. Didn't have any of his tracks. So, as you can see, it's very thick here, and he could be lying in any one of these little riverbeds to our right, seeking the cool shade. Come on, Kunuma. Where are you hiding? I can hear some rattling. So Sticker's alarm calling up ahead. It could be for us, or it could be for the leopard. We're not too sure. But we'll just stop and listen for a moment. For those of you who weren't on the sunrise safari, it's important to know that Jamie and I were teamed up on these tracks also, and it wasn't until about 5 minutes before the end of broadcast that we eventually found her here, or him rather, at Buffelshoek Dam. And now it's great that we can come back into this area and continue the search, hopefully to find him again. It really is a lot easier when you are tracking if you're working in teams. It's just that many more eyes and ears together. And as you are well aware, it's not an easy business finding these animals, even though we knew where it was this morning. And like I said, it probably hasn't moved too far. We still decided before we even came out that we should both come here, consolidate our efforts, and try and do our best to find him for you. I know a lot of you have spent so many hours watching him that you'd really have loved to spend more time with him this morning, and we're going to try and make it up to you this afternoon. Patience can often be a very useful tool when searching for animals. You have to almost try and fight the urge to continue moving forward to look, because quite often your ears can be one of the best ways to help you find animals, just like Jamie's now moving into an area to follow up on some squirrel alarm calls. It's often the animals that help lead us to the predators. Even this morning it was rattling sticklers that started alarm calling, tiny little birds that just go tweet, tweet, tweet. Tweet, tweet, tweet. And their alarm calls so often, but it was their alarm calls that led me to look into the bush where Kunyuma was who have joined the show more recently. You will be getting a lot of new birds to add to your bird lists, and one of the storks that we saw this morning was the woolly necked stork, which we don't see very often. I remember seeing them more in summer, I think. So Jamie's also just off the vehicle now, searching on foot. So let's creep forward a little bit in the vehicle. Come on, Kunyuma, there's a lot of people that would love to see you this afternoon. Including myself. It's so thick in here, you could be lying just meters from us, and we would never know. Kunyuma's regular traits is to snarl at us and to hiss at us. Doesn't happen on a daily occurrence, but it is certainly one of his habits that differentiates or distinguishes him from his brother. Quarantine, he's a lot more relaxed. And it's quite interesting. Some days, like I say, he'll do it, and others he won't. But this morning he didn't, but he was still a little bit offish towards the vehicle. He wasn't entirely happy with us and kept slinking off, but then he lay out perfectly in the open for us, so we did get some great views of him eventually. But in the beginning it was tricky going, and I was putting Jean-Andre in some awkward angles. Once we park the vehicle on steep slopes, it makes it a nightmare for the cameraman having to try and adjust the camera head. Okay, well, the good news is Jamie's back on the vehicle, so I think you'd all enjoy an update from her on what happened with the squirrel alarm calls. Who knows what she may have found there. She may have found it was just a slender mongoose or a bird of prey. And then I'm going to take a short walk, and then hopefully I'll have some kind of an update for you in the next 5 or 10 minutes. It is certainly the best way to go about tracking and finding these animals. We do need to be able to spend time on foot, and I'm about to head off now, so wish me luck, and we will see you all a little bit later.
So similar sort of shaped bird to a heron, but the woolly-necked stork looks something like this. So also the same height, around a sort of meter or so in height, maybe a little bit less. So that's around 3 feet, or just under 3 feet, and just a little bit bulkier than the herons, so quite a similar shape. We can see if I switch back to where I had the herons, which was around here. So quite a similar body shape between the two, but the stork is a little bit bulkier, a little bit heavier. So that is the bird that James was looking for, that he saw with Scott. So we have an answer to that mystery, but not to the mystery as to where Kunyuma managed to disappear off to. So let us see if we can keep track of that. And I'm sure he's still in this area. We have haven't managed to pick up any tracks coming out. My imagination is playing tricks with me. So the sun is still quite high at the moment, which makes it a little bit more difficult to track or to see the track straight away, which is why I keep tipping out over the side of the vehicle, and I really don't want to miss his tracks, because if he has crossed into across our eastern boundary, then we definitely can't follow up, and then we know that we must move on from the area. So I do just want to check nice and thoroughly. And it is one of the main cut lines, but there is less traffic in between game drives. It's not one of the main access routes to any of the lodges. So we could come across some undisturbed tracks if we get lucky. So since I am new and I of the cut line that I wanted to check before looping around, so I just want to make sure Scott and I don't end up checking the same place. Scott for Jamie. He might be out and about still on his walk. So, as I was thanking our amazing viewers, John just wanted to pass on the message that he thinks that the work that we do is awesome, and he says a big thank you. Thank you to you, John, because obviously without the viewers we wouldn't be able to do this kind of work. So it is so very special to be able to conduct a game drive that reaches so many different people. And Keegan from Cape Town, great to have another South African on board with us. And Keegan would like to know if we ever see any of the rare antelope species such as sable on Djuma. And I'm actually not sure about the answer to that question. I'm sure that there are some around this reserve. So I don't know if any of the WildEarth viewers have ever seen one, or if they know if any of the presenters have seen one on Djuma. So maybe if you could let me know if you've ever seen them, because that would be awesome. I know that some of the guys have mentioned seeing them on Manyeleti, which is where some of us are actually staying at the moment. So yeah, interesting, very, very interesting question. I've yet to see one, but they are out here. So I will be keeping my eyes peeled for them. Scott for Jamie. Yes. But if you copy, just to let you know, I've checked cheetah cutline. Now just by Guari Pan. No tracks yet. Copy. So guys, I'm just thinking about my next move. Because Scott hasn't seen any tracks and I haven't seen any tracks. So the both of us being here, probably one of us needs to move off and to look for different things. So I'm probably going to take a different direction that leads us away from and for those of you who are wondering where we are and are regular viewers of this show, we are just at Guari Pan, where the Nkuhumas killed that buffalo about 2 weeks ago. So this is the antelope that I'm talking about. Really, truly beautiful. It can stand very, very tall. And the females also have horns, but slightly smaller. And the one on the right is also a rare antelope species, one that's known as a roan antelope. Very similar in size and shape, but with slightly less curved horns and without that black sable color. So absolutely stunning antelope, and ones that are incredibly rare to see out here. They are common in other areas and well protected. And these are the kind of animals that are worth quite a lot of money. So we're talking a couple of 100,000 rand for a young female sable. So you do get, they are very, very valuable animals, which means that they are quite well protected. So that was just a quick lesson in what a sable is for those of you who might not know or might be new to the whole safari experience. And now I think it's time to leave Scott to his search for Kunuma and start to move off to search for my own other animals. In terms of line updates, as I drive past Pan, as to the best of my knowledge, the Umpuhumas are off to the east of us, the Styx Pride are off to the south of us, and the timber males are still with the Styx Pride. As many of the regular viewers know, one of the males, Hairy Belly, was last seen mating with one of those females. So that is my line update, and I also know that the Birmingham boys were last seen on Buffelshoek, but they haven't been seen in a while. At Twin Dams Waterhole, and then they went their separate ways. So the female leopards, although they are solitary and they do have territories, they will be quite tolerant of the movement of their younger sons in their territory. So just an interesting picture, and that is why tracking can be so interesting, because although we didn't see them together, we could actually start drawing our own conclusions. And the story of what happened last night is actually all there for us to read in the morning. So one of the things that I love the most about tracking is that very, very often not only are the answers there for you to find, but you can actually learn quite a bit from animal behavior just by looking at the tracks and knowing what to look for. So guys, I am currently heading south, but along just in from the eastern border of Djuma. And I want to see if there's any evidence of the lion prides coming back into Djuma or back around Djuma. I'm still listening to the Game Drive channel intently. And possibly even to see, because I am heading to where Karula's last tracks were, just to at least see which direction she will have gone in. So while I do that and I set off on my search, I would also like to get into the drainage lines, just because on a personal level they are nice and cool and shady, and they're also a very good place to look for things like leopard. I'm going to send you back across to Scott now for an update, and I will be back with you when I am back in the shade again.
Welcome back, everyone. Sadly, no good news yet, but I think what we're going to do now is just kind of extend our search area a little bit, see what else is happening. I am interested in probably coming back here a little bit later once it's cooled down. I've got a feeling he's been watching us from the comfort of his shady spots and enjoying us scratching our heads and wondering where he is. He could even be looking at us right now. Anyway, I'm confident that later on it's going to cool down and he is going to come out and have a drink at the water. As much as other antelope in higher danger zones, that's meant that the sable populations have been hammered by the predators. Subsequently, a lot of the water holes in the Greater Kruger National Park have been closed down, and the sable numbers are increasing, but they're not nearly as many as there used to be. There used to be many in the Sabi Sands as well, and now we see them very rarely here. I haven't seen one in over 4.5 years of being here. But not far north of us in the Manyeleti, you get the occasional herd, and maybe one day we'll be lucky and a stray will come into the Sabi Sands so we can show you one live on safari. Cooling down a little bit, but it's still quite warm out here. There's a cool breeze which is helping keep us cool. I know Jamie loves the hot weather. On holiday, sipping cold drinks and wearing clothing suited for the temperature, which is usually not much, I guess, when you're on the beach. What I'd like to do is show you exactly where we found him this morning, because it was quite interesting, the whole story that unfolded. great thing about us working this area is because it is a hot day, we may be lucky enough to see some animals coming down to drink. And this morning we were treated to a large herd of impala that arrived as we got into position here. We drove down here this morning, saw an Inyala drinking, so we actually took this path. I would usually have taken the right fork, but I took this one, so I'm going to take you through the exact movements of what we did. It's a bit of a steeper decline here, so that's why I usually take the other route. And then we actually did a figure of 8 here to turn around to get a good view of the Inyala. Oh, look at this. Not what we're looking for, but some other Inyala. And I'll continue our exact movements after we've enjoyed a look at them. Such pretty antelope, the Inyala. The Bambis of the African wilderness. Now those vertical white stripes and spots that you can see don't appear to help with camouflage much very now. When they're in thick bush, it helps chop their body up into little puzzle pieces. And that's typically where you find them. Chewing on leaves. They're mainly browsers, but in the dry camouflage is so good at this time of the year. They really blend in incredibly well. And that's why I'm confident that he could still be here. We haven't seen any tracks, neither Jamie nor myself, indicating where he may have gone. He's probably also aware that it's a good spot to lie in wait and ambush. He knows there'll be a heavy traffic of animals moving through this area to come and drink. We drove up here and then eventually lost him just up ahead. We've been mentioning quite a lot about the weather this afternoon. I know it's quite hot, and Pamela would like to know exactly how hot it is. And it's 30 33 degrees Celsius on this pleasant winter's afternoon. Can you believe it? So, quite warm. Thankfully at this time of the year it's a dry heat. During the summer months it's incredibly humid. Which makes it a little bit less enjoyable for people with a thermometer like myself. As I run a little bit hotter than those people around me. Okay, well I think this is enough bundu bashing for now. And we're gonna take another road out into a slightly new area and come back here a little bit later once it's cooled down. He looked quite hungry this morning, so that makes me think that maybe his hunger has caused him to move further than we would have expected him to on this hot winter's day. We're not giving up yet, everyone, but we are moving out of this area for now. And we've had a very kind comment through from Josephina in the Netherlands, who is offering to send across some rain, which would be wonderful if you could do that. We would love an unexpected downpour. So get your rain dance going and let us know when to expect the rain. It will affect the broadcast, so if you could warn us, we could kind of plan ahead and make sure we've got some wet weather activities lined up, because the animals have to be somewhere. Well, if Kunyuma is watching us and he thinks that he's managed to shake us off his tail, you're wrong. Wherever you are, we are coming back to find you. We're going to go and look for some other characters and see who else is out and about here on Juma. This is the one road that we haven't checked where he could potentially have crossed north into Buffalo's Hook. We tracked him far this morning. I'm guessing we actually tracked him the same tracks from our southern boundary all the way to here, which is very close to our northern boundary. It was a very long tracking exercise. There's no guarantees that it was the same leopard we were tracking the whole way, but I'm fairly confident that it was, which means that its general direction of movement has been north, and it means that it could well have continued to be that way. But obviously we'll have to change direction at some point, otherwise they'll end up on the North Pole, for example, in this case, because he was heading north. And while we expand our search for not just Kunyumana, but anyone in this general area, we're going to send you on another adventure with Jamie and see where she's working. She would have covered some distance by now, so I'm sure you'll have a pleasant change of scenery.
And I am keenly anticipating the rainy season, not only because we haven't had much in the way of rain in the last rainy season, but also because I'm keen to see what these amazing drainage line look like when the water rainfall. It's like the bush actually transforms overnight. So I'm really excited for that. And I'm also really, really looking forward to the smell of the first rain after this long, dry winter. So that is an exciting moment to anticipate. It's an indescribable smell, and one that I really, really love. After it is so dusty and hot, and it does get particularly windy at this time of year, stirring up all of that dust, and you get that first rains which just wash the place clean and smell amazing. So we're getting very close to spot had those female leopard tracks as well as the male leopard tracks this morning. So we are going to be keeping a lookout for Karula, who I think might still be in this area. The last time I saw her, she managed to eat an entire steenbok whole in the space of the sunrise safari, which was absolutely phenomenal to watch. And I'm hoping she is still around. But what I've noticed about Karula is that she can be incredibly difficult to track. She often zigs and zags through the blocks. And that's true of all leopards, but somehow Karula is extra talented at it. So, I've got a great question from John in Atlanta, and it comes with a good story, so I'm actually going to stop and tell you all about it. So John in Atlanta would like to know if I've ever seen a pangolin, and I have, which is really, really fortunate. First of all, I've actually seen 3 in my life, but the first one I ever saw was one that I found when I was out tracking leopard. And I was walking through a block trying to see if she was still in the same place that she was before, because in that particular area you had to double check that you had a sighting before you went off-road. So I was walking and I heard some rustling and immediately assumed it was some birds, and then sort of double checked and thought, no, I've got to go back and see what that is. It just sounds a little bit odd. And there I was very surprised to see a pangolin wandering through. And it was such an amusing moment for me, because one of the guys I was out on drive with, we were actually having a competition to see who could see the coolest thing. And this was probably within the first 10 minutes of my drive. So I got really, really excited, called it in to all of the guys that I worked with, and ran back to the car to get a camera. I didn't have my rifle with me, and I was quite far away from the vehicle, so I didn't want to get all of the guests out to see it until the rifle arrived. So I just ran back to get a camera and then ran back to where the pangolin was. And I looked away for about 2 seconds and this thing had just vanished, completely gone. And I was so stressed because I knew that there were so many people on their way to see this amazing thing that I'd found and that I'd said I'd found. I hadn't got a picture of it. I had absolutely no proof. Just the guests in the vehicle had heard me saying to them, it's a pangolin, I found a pangolin. And I could hear the cars racing up behind me, desperately looking everywhere. And they all jumped out, all of my colleagues, and came running up to see where it was. And of course I'd lost it completely. And I was terribly, terribly embarrassed and rather sad and disappointed, until we realized that it was basically within a meter of my foot, and it had just curled up in some long grass and was hiding there. So we did get to see our pangolin in the end, which was really exciting. And for those of you who don't know, a pangolin is a really critically endangered species. We've got lots of different species throughout the world. It is a scaly anteater, and it kind of looks like a cross between, if I had to describe it, like a cross between an aardvark and a pine cone. So it is an insect eater, and so little is known about them because they are so secretive and rare and solitary and very, very hard to find. So it was an amazing moment for me, and I was very, very excited, and at least I did get to see it. And then the other 2 that I saw were released by a nearby wildlife sanctuary back into the wild. So they'd been found trapped under an electric fence, and they'd sort of, often what pangolin do is if they get a shock from an electric fence, that the fences are necessary because they're here to keep the animals from getting out and interacting with the rest of the communities around the area. But what they'll do is when they get that initial shock, they curl up into the ball using their spines to protect them. But of course that doesn't work so well against electricity. So these 2 were lucky enough to have been rescued and rehabilitated, brought back to health and fed up, and then released back onto our reserve. So I've seen 3 pangolin in my life, and for some bizarre reason, I have yet to see an aardvark. So I'm not sure about it. It's some kind of curse, but I have yet to see one, and I eagerly anticipate the day that I do. Hopefully all of you guys will be with me, and I'm sure my excitement will be uncontainable at that moment. But those are my pangolin seeing stories. And a pangolin would be amazing to see here. I'm not sure if any of the WildEarth viewers have ever seen one. If you guys have seen them on any of the drives, please let me know. I haven't heard about it, and I'm sure I would have, but that would be amazing to see. One of the other amazing things that I saw with a pangolin, and I wasn't actually at the sighting, but a friend of mine was, who was guiding out of a reserve very close to here, and he actually saw a male lion. He was following the male behind at night in the evening, and he saw this male lion actually suddenly dive into the bushes and come out with a full-grown pangolin in its mouth, but it couldn't quite work out what to do with this thing and sort of batted it around a bit just out of pure curiosity, which is really cool when you see it. It wasn't so much a hunting instinct as this lion just trying to decide what on earth to do with this strange thing, and obviously never seen one before in its life. So it picked it up and batted it around a bit, and then decided that that particular plaything wasn't too much fun to play with, and their scales are very, very sharp. So it decided, no, not worth it, left it rolled up in a ball, and I think one very relieved pangolin who had a story to tell its friends. But the lion, it's amazing to see and to know that lions do play and explore. They don't just hunt. So guys, I have heard a report that the hyena den is quite active at the moment, and since I'm not too far away, I'm going to head in that direction and just see what's happening over that side, because spotted hyena always have something fun to offer when they're out and about. And while we're going there, just a quick reminder, if you are new and you're joining us for the first time, this is a live safari. Everything you're seeing on your screens is happening right now on the Sabi Sands. And we'd love to hear from you, and you can send through any questions or comments on #SafariLive on Twitter, or to questions@wildearth.tv. And please let us know if you are a new viewer. We'd love to hear from you, and it's always exciting to know when there's somebody else as keen to learn about this area as we are. So I'll just up the speed a little bit, and we can make our way there. Jigger's got a little bit of a squeaky brake, probably just some dust in the brake pads. And I've just had a very interesting question occur to me, and I can't believe I've never asked this or never wondered about this, possibly just because I was so busy getting to know this whole area and getting to do these drives. But I know the history behind Jigger's name, which is this vehicle that I'm driving at the moment, but I have absolutely no idea why Wendy is called Wendy. So that is something I will be following up on. Maybe some of the regular viewers know. I'm sure it's something you would have pondered yourselves. But I can't believe I've never questioned why Wendy is called Wendy. So guys, while I make my way to the hyena den, I am going to send you back for a cameo link to Scott, who has some birds to show you. And I will be back with you soon. Bye guys.
Welcome back to not a golden spotted cat, but a golden spotted bird. They really have incredible markings, these crested barbets. And I've no doubt Jandre has put the extra zoom on for you to enjoy some close-ups. Seems to have hopped away, but I'd like to try and show you another bird that's higher up in the tree, kind of at 1 o'clock, but quite high up. It's hopping around that little black bird there, Jean-Andre. It's going to be tricky, but we're going to go for it because it could well be a new bird for a lot of you. Any luck, Jean-Andre? Looking very thick in there.
Got him.
Well done. Now this is called a southern black tit. You heard me correctly the first time, so I do not need to relay that again. Strange name, very distinctive white wings on that black body. So that could be a new one for your bird list. And if you haven't started the bird list left, then you should start right away, because it is a great way to keep track of how many different birds you've seen with us on safari. And we're going to leave that southern black tit now, because there's another one that I've only got to show you once before, I think. It's quite far off, but in the tree in front of us. It's a black bird that some of you managed to identify correctly when I quizzed you last time. And that is called a common scimitable, a cousin of the green-billed woodhoopoo, or green woodhoopoo, sorry, or red-billed woodhoopoo as it was formerly known. And they look to be snacking on little insects, hiding in the bark of these knobthorn acacia trees. Wonderful. Okay, well, we are going to continue now. But before we drag you along with us, we're going to send you back to Jamie, who appears to be heading to some excitement. See you later.
So guys, welcome back, and we are still on the road to the hyena den just to see what's happening there. And I hear that you've been looking at green woodhoopoos, I believe, and they are definitely one of my favorite birds, and I love it when you see them all collected on the branch, rocking backwards and forwards and calling. Okay, so let us head towards the den and see what's going on. But they are one of my favorite animals to look at, just because you get that wonderful contrast, especially in this kind of light of the black and the white. And for those of you who were with me yesterday, we saw that amazing little zebra foal. It was so incredibly cute and so fluffy. And on my way between camps, between drives this morning, I did see a very, very tiny baby zebra. Unfortunately, it was outside of our boundaries, but I did stop and watch it for quite a while. And it appears that he's also having problems with flies, where he's shaking his head. So I know the feeling. This is the stallion, or at least a stallion. I'm not sure if he's with a bachelor herd or if he has his own herd that is feeding a bit further into the block. But there you can see, especially when he swishes his tail, which he should do fairly regularly. Watch him not do it now. But you can see that very, very thin stripe between the cheeks of the bottom. And that's what tells you. It can be quite difficult with zebra to tell the difference between male and female. Okay, but since he is presenting just his rear end, we can carry on moving and just see. Let's just poke our nose into the hyena den because I am close to it, and we can see what's happening there. And I also do want to, I haven't seen any tracks for Karula. So I've been following up from where Scott was a little bit earlier this morning, and I haven't found any fresh tracks of a female leopard. And I don't want to spend too much time wandering through drainage lines, but I do want to head to that open area that Shadow and Sindile were favoring quite a bit over the last 2 weeks. And for those of you who were with me yesterday afternoon, we had that wonderful sighting of those two playing about in that nice open area. So I want to check there first, and then we can head to the hyena den, just because I wanted to get a little bit cooler in time for the mothers to start coming back. And I was hearing reports a little bit earlier, in fact from Andrew, that the sub-adult cubs were called by the mother and actually moved away from the den. So it'll be very curious to see if they are still there or what they were doing. Was she calling them to come to a kill? I don't think so. But then was she potentially calling them to move to a different den site? So I'm not entirely sure how long those cubs have been, or that hyena clan have been denning at that particular den, certainly as long as I've been here. And it might be due time for them to move to a different one. So it could be interesting. We might have a look around. I'll loop around the various areas and just see what we can see. So guys, while I find myself and decide which way I want to go to follow up on Shadow and Sindile, I'm going to send you back across to Scott, who is still with some birds, but definitely slightly bigger this time. And I will catch up with you a bit later. Cheers for now.
Well, for the ornithologists out there, you must be loving this view. Jean has just mentioned that it's by far the best view he's ever had of these Battalier eagles. Perfect golden afternoon sunlight. And that's a happy couple we're looking at, who will mate for life. Looks like the male on the left and the female on the right. Sadly, because she is facing towards us, we can't see very clearly. But if she was standing broadside to us like he is, we'd be able to see a marked notice in the different color of her wings. She would have a white bar below where his creamy shoulder patches. Those trailing feathers would show a whiter color. Taking some time to do some grooming. It's not easy being this pretty out here. It requires a lot of time spent grooming. They can be great indicators for potential kills. And the one appears to be looking straight below it. So am I, hoping to find a leopard who's stashed its kill at the base of this weeping boerbean tree, but no immediate sign of any carcass here. And maybe they just enjoy this roost. It looks like a very comfortable spot for them to sit down and enjoy the sunset. But they will predominantly feed on carrion, even though they can hunt for themselves. Now you can see her white trailing edge on her wing feather. You could very slightly for a moment there. And while we enjoy the view of these stunning birds, we can just clear up something for Lynn, who wasn't sure of exactly what bird the last one was that we saw. And Lynn, you obviously want to add it to your list. It was the common scimitable. Not sure where my bird book has gone. Oh, there it is. And I will get a picture of it out in my book ready for you to show you a closer up view, Lynn, so that you know exactly what it is for next time. And I'm told you just saw the bateleur catch a fly in midair, flying past its head. And sadly, I did not see that. I am monitorless, so I've got no idea of what Jean-Andre is filming. And I was busy looking down at my bird book. Anyway, what I'd like Jean-Andre to do now is to try and pan onto the birds that are landing in this tree next to the bateleurs. They might give them a hard time. And they're very similar birds to the common scimitable. They look very similar, especially when silhouetted like this, but they're about twice the size. And you can hear them start calling now. Keep listening closely. Hopefully they'll really get a cacophony going. No? But you did get to see them. Those are the green woodhoopers that I spoke of earlier. A cousin, you could say, of the scimitable. So we've seen both very similar looking birds now, and they're both on the same page in the book, so I'll show you them shortly once we've finished enjoying this sighting. Maybe we'll get to see the bateleur catch a fly. There's me just saying they're not hunters, they usually eat carrion, and then it plucked a fly out of the middle of the sky around it. That requires some serious hunting skills. Okay, well, it's been a wonderful sighting, but I don't think too much is going to change here, so we are going to continue on. So, I've mentioned that they mainly eat carrion, and Donna would like to know what exactly would they eat, what else would they substitute their diet with. They are a fairly open-minded predator when it does come to hunting. Monitor lizards, chameleons, squirrels, just about anything not too large and rodent-like. They'd probably even go for snakes as well. So a wide variety of prey when they do decide to hunt, and it's been researched that it's more likely for older bateleurs to actually adopt hunting, whereas younger bateleurs will be more inclined to strictly feed on and search for carrion and kills, which they will often be the first to. They're very low flying birds of prey, and what that means is that because they fly very low, they increase the likelihood of them finding something hidden in a tree, smaller kills made by leopards and animals like that who stash their kills away, whereas vultures are often dealing on bigger carcasses or bigger kills that can be seen from higher up. And that's why they're such useful birds for us to follow, because they can lead us to kills, and they certainly have since we've been operating here. So, this is for Lynn. The common scimitable is here, and the green woodhooper is here. The green woodhooper is the one we've just seen now, and you can see it's very different in terms of coloration, beak color, feet color, and even size. Also, the green woodhoopers will almost always fly around in a family flock, whereas the common scimitables will be solitary. Okay. Ooh, hold on, have you already zoomed out? If you haven't, this bird over here is one that I would really love to show all of you, the Narina trogon. They like quite thick areas, and we don't have enough thicker riverine area to probably find them here. And I've only actually ever seen one in the Sabi Sands along the Sand River, but there's a chance we could see one, and it's an incredibly pretty bird, the Narina trogon. but not very commonly seen. Good. Yeah, it is a wonderful afternoon. I wonder what Kunyuma's doing now. We will head back into that area, but not just yet. At the moment we are heading towards where we had his tracks earlier this morning, because at one point I started running back to the vehicle to try and save time, and I fear that my torch may have fallen off my funny little holster that it buckles into on my hip. So we are going in search of my torch. We obviously could bump into any animals along the way, so please don't feel that I'm being selfish taking you on a torch hunt. Brenda in Pennsylvania has obviously been watching the show since the summer months and is wondering why we don't see the chameleons as often as we do in the summer. And you're right, it's simply that they are hibernating, they are seeking shelter, and they've become dormant. There's not many insects around, and it is very cold for cold-blooded animals. Having said that though, about a month ago, Brian and myself saw one feeding on a chameleon, a hornbill eating a chameleon, which was bittersweet. I love hornbills, but I love chameleons as well. But they are still around, but you don't see them nearly as much as in the summer. They'll be seeking refuge in thickets and I guess in cavities in trees, but hiding out for the time being. But not to worry, in a few months' time there will be a multitude of them again, and we may even be able to find you, I'm fairly certain we will be able to find you some of the tiny little new hatchlings. Interestingly, some chameleons actually give birth to live-born. Not all lay eggs. Now, Sarah, it's good to have you with us. For those of you who don't know Sarah, she would like to know if the Bateleur eagle is not the same as the black eagle. And no, Sarah, they're not the same. They are very black in color, but the Bateleur's got that red beak and red talons, and it's also got a bit of brown on its wings and white underneath its wings, whereas the black eagles only have a small white V on their back. Kunyuma walked here this morning, through here, just by the way, while we were tracking him. Actually, right here on the right-hand footpath, you might be able to see a few footprints. So this is where he walked this morning. The black eagle, Sarah, you also don't get here. They prefer high altitude areas and areas with large mountains. I love this riverbed cruise. It's much further down in this riverbed that I think I lost my torch. So that's where we're heading, and then we'll make our way back up towards Buffalo's Waterhole a bit later, in the hope that Kunyuma reappears. Some go away birds alarm calling possibly at us. I wonder What else it could be? There's an Inyala very close by to them, which is why we're reversing. Maybe they can see a snake in the grass, who knows? Slender mongoose, snake, something's getting their attention. Or maybe they're just competing with one another for food on that spike thorn tree. We are in luck. You wouldn't believe it, but I can see a carcass. I'm fairly certain. I can see a red rib cage. And whatever must have killed that thing could catch the Inyala as well. And I'm guessing that is what the go-away bird is alarming at. I hope I'm not imagining things. Oh no, I am. I'm dreaming. False alarm, everyone. Huge apologies. I thought I had seen a rib cage sticking out, but it's just some red leaves. Well, that's certainly not the first time it's happened on my guiding career. And the power of the mind, together with the faith in these go-away birds, led me to believe that there was a leopard hiding in that bush. Well, Jamie is ready to have you back on her vehicle and is urgently requesting you join her. So we're not going to keep you from her. Enjoy. We will see you a bit later.
So guys, from an imaginary carcass in a tree to what I promise you that up until about a split second ago was a real bird and not a figment of my imagination. We were just sitting with some brown-headed parrots, and if we sit quietly for a second, we can still hear them, which I'm going to use as inconclusive proof that they are still here. So I'm going to be really quiet, and we can hear them chirping. Beep, beep, beep. Okay, those squeaks, those are the brown-headed parrots that I really wanted to show you and have since disappeared. So I'm going to try and get one more visual. There was one sitting right above us as well, but that's also decided to fly off at the crucial moment, just because I think they knew and are having a quiet chuckle. That chirping there, that's them laughing at me right now. So, let's see if I can get them. Otherwise, I'm going to tell you a little bit about them. And for viewers, I know that many of the regular viewers have seen them before, but for new viewers, they are very, very pretty little birds. So I'm going to try. Unfortunately, they've all flown straight into the west of me, which means that they would just be in silhouette unless I can get one on the other side. I can still hear them. I promise you that was not imaginary. It was not like Scott's imaginary kill. Okay. I think they've all left. That's really sad. Oh dear. Okay. Well, now I can hear one chirping in this tree. I just can't find it. It's somewhere tucked in the top there. One of those wonderful things about filming and showing people wildlife is that, oh, and it just flew out of the tree. So this is the second time I've seen them in this tree, and we are on quarantine clearings, so you can see a nice open space. And while we have a look at that wonderfully open space, I'm going to try and find a picture of what a brown-headed parrot looks like. I can still hear them laughing at me. It's not funny. It is a little bit funny though. So they are really beautiful, stunning birds. Bright, bright, bright green. with that, obviously with a brown head, hence the name brown-headed parrots. And there you can see, now you find them, they are one of the most common parrot species in this area. You do get a little bit right far north in Kruger, you might encounter a grey-headed parrot, and a little bit to the west of us. Oh, we've got at least some bird life. So we've got a grey go-away bird having a bit of a dust bath there. And they actually do that as a way of keeping clean, so the dust particles work quite well at just scraping off the various mites and parasites that they might get. And it's common behavior in most of these bird species. They will come down and shake themselves in the sand. You also get birds such as hornbills that will go and sit on termite nests, not termite nests, ant nest, and they allow the ants to crawl all over them as a way of clearing them up. And the ants actually produce a type of acid that also helps with keeping them parasite free for as long as possible. So really cool and interesting bird life. I'm very sorry that we missed the parrots. So for those of you who are new, I do have a picture for you in case you were wondering what the mystery imaginary bird is. And just by the way, they are still fluttering around every now and again, but completely without us being able to get a good shot of them. So there we go. That is a brown-headed parrot. That is what we were looking at and what is currently chuckling away at me in the bushes behind me. And it's, as I said, one of the most common birds that we find here, parrot species that we find here. If we just have a look at its feet, it's got what's known as a zygodactyl foot structure. So there are 2 feet to the front and 2 feet to the back, and that tells us immediately what it is specialized to do, and that is to perch quite comfortably on trees and contort itself in various positions to not only avoid the camera, but also to eat fruit and to get at the various parts of the food they get from the tree. So a really stunning bird. Pity we didn't get to see it, but that is the way it goes at the moment. So I did pop into the hyena den just a little bit earlier, and it is still a little bit hot for them to be active. There was nothing happening there. So I'm going to do a loop around the area, especially where I know that there is a den site that they have used in the past, and just poke my nose in there and see what we can find. Unfortunately, all of the bird life in the area seems to have disappeared now that I was trying to show you some. So, as I said, today's afternoon's theme is picture day. So we'll carry on now. See what we can see. So, as always, the fantastic regular Wild Earth viewers have sent me through a bit of an update as to the explanation behind Wendy's name, which is the other vehicle, the vehicle that Scott is on. So thank you all, and I know that Joanne and William sent through information, and Janet has actually sent through that on the Facebook page for Jigger, which is this car. Wendy was named because the Wild Earth company was looking for a new vehicle, and they found one that was perfect, that already had the name Wendy, and unfortunately it was sold just before we could get it. And so Wendy is called Wendy after the one that got away. So great to hear the little bit of history behind Wendy's name. And it's always fun learning to drive new cars like this, because they each have their own little characteristics. Wendy's brakes are a little bit squishy, Jigger's steering column jigs about, and it's all part of the whole learning experience. even on the quietest afternoons, the scenery here is still breathtaking. As I drive straight into the sun, Peggy would like to know if I'm not afraid of getting sunburns or too much exposure to the sun, and she wants to know whether or not I wear sun cream. And I will tell you that my mom asks me that question on a pretty much day-to-day basis, and I do wear sunscreen, I promise, and I always put on a face cream first thing in the morning that has extra sun cream, just to be a little bit more protective of my skin. I know that I have been exposed to, as a child growing up in South Africa, lots and lots of sun, and with my sort of somewhat Irish, Scottish ancestry somewhere in the background, I do have, believe it or not, I do actually naturally have fairly fair skin, which has led to innumerable freckles around and about. But yes, I do take precautions for the sun. I am fairly used to it. I have built up my layers of tan over the last sort of quarter of a century, so I have been building up my sun protection slowly but surely. But definitely something that everybody needs to be aware about, especially in the southern hemisphere when the sun is actually at its closest to us, because as I'm sure many of you know, the Earth doesn't move in a perfectly circular orbit. We have some warthog foraging. They are tucked behind a nice row of long grass. I'll just try and get us a good view. Thank you, Aardvark, well spotted. How's this? Thank you. So yes, Peggy, in answer to your question, I do use sunblock and I do try and wear a hat as often as possible, but it hasn't stopped the wrinkles from coming a little bit sooner than expected. And there we have a little warthog just highlighted in the afternoon sun, and I do really enjoy watching warthogs. They are such characters. And from what I can see, this is a fairly young one. It doesn't have a massive set of tusks, and it's still got those white whiskers growing out to the side. I'm just catching up on some air like that. It's a very common, I'm not quite sure how to describe this, possibly a joke that many guides tell their guests, is that the warthog travels around like that because the skin is so tight. So it's kind of like a local legend. So the idea is that the skin of the warthog is so tight that if it drops its tail down, then it pulls the eyelids up and it can keep its eyes open. And if it goes running through the grass and it wants to keep the grass seeds and all of that out of its eyes, and it needs to close its eyelids slightly, its skin is so tight and wrinkled and dry that it has to lift its tail up just to loosen it up so it can squint into the grass. But that is obviously not the case. Usually the tail up like that means that it's a great way, especially when they're running in this long grass, for babies to be able to follow their moms. I think they've disappeared. So we had this nice family scene just in the afternoon setting sun, and I'm going to send you from one family scene to another with Scott, and I will be back with you a bit later.
Welcome back, everyone. And this is really a beautiful, beautiful scene. It's not looking too promising for these catfish as the pond is drying up here at Twin Dams. And there was a fish eagle that flew off, keeping an eye on them. It's probably such easy pickings that the fish eagle is just waiting until it can find some more space to jam in more catfish, because I mean, for a fish eagle, that is just too easy. So I'm guessing it's already full bellied, but if we spend enough time here, we may get lucky and see it swoop down and catch one. That would be incredible. While we've been waiting here, I've been listening to a squirrel alarm calling to the west of us. So we might take a little mosey on to the west on our southern boundary, see if there's anything there. Failing that, we're going to rush back to the Buffalo's Hook waterhole. I got my torch, so that's good news. It was in the Mulwati riverbed where I was running this morning to get back to the vehicle to try and speed up the tracking process, which I guess may have helped, because we only scraped in and found that leopard in the last few moments of the sunrise safari. It's cooling down, it's the perfect temperature now. And even while we were parked there, a little bit warm, but now that we've got the wind blowing over our faces, it's a lot more enjoyable. It will continue to get considerably colder as the evening progresses. Well, the signal might get a little bit bad for a few moments, but it should rectify itself once we get through this little dip. Hold tight, I'm going to speed us through. Are you still there? I hope so. So for those of you who have only just recently joined this sunset safari, just to give you a little bit of a recap, Kunyuma, a young 2.5-year-old male leopard who we haven't seen for quite some time, was found this morning up at the Buffalo's Hook waterhole. We only saw him for a few minutes, and then he disappeared off into some thick vegetation right at the end of the morning broadcast. Both Jamie and myself headed back into that area this afternoon and fine-combed it. We searched high and low, but couldn't even come up with one single track. So didn't have much luck. But I'm still confident he is in that general area. I think he was just watching us walk past him, and he was just sniggering to himself as we scratched our heads. And at this stage of the evening, I think we might get lucky and find him coming back down for a drink. Maybe he'll be stalking some impala nearby that will alert us to his presence. So that is the plan. We haven't seen him until this morning, probably sure for a couple of months, perhaps. So it'll be good to spend some more time with him. Well, I really love the way we can interact with one another now. Jennifer's just sent through a comment saying that because I was seeing carcasses earlier when I thought we'd found a leopard kill, maybe it's because I don't have enough meat in my diet, and I wish that was, well, I don't wish that was the case, but I can assure you that is not the case. We eat very well out here, and South Africans are a meat-eating society. We really enjoy eating meat and barbecuing it, or braaiing, as we call it. Confirm where, Craig? Okay, copy, thanks. So it's not that, Jennifer, it's merely my easy ability to become excited. And in a scenario like that, the go-away birds, plus just a few glimmers of red, was all I needed to be convinced there was a leopard kill. And I often make these mistakes. My worst one was probably with guests when it was early on in my career, but it could happen to you at any stage, I guess. And we had been searching for lions. I think it was the final morning after spending 3 nights here in the Sabi Sands, and we had yet to show them one single lion. And we were on the last morning drive following lion tracks, and I spotted these brown figures walking along the edge of a clearing, quite far away in my defense, but not far enough to confuse a waterbuck with a lion. Anyway, I screamed, "There they are, the lion!" Everyone lifted up their binoculars, including myself, and it was a herd of waterbuck. And my guests, I don't think they've forgiven me to this day for getting them so excited about the wrong animal, and we didn't end up finding lion for them. It can go like that. But statistically, your chances of seeing the big five when you are in the Sabi Sands is higher than many, many reserves. Sorry, there's just something strange I saw on the road there. I just want to go back and double check. Sorry about the dusk, John Doe. It's this big smooth track on the right of the road. And I'm guessing it's where... I worked it out, it was just a hippo dragging its foot over the hump. Now, a lot of you, I'm sure, are concerned for those catfish's well-being, as the future isn't looking too bright for them. And Grace is interested to know, where exactly do they come from? If these ponds dry up every year, which they don't, so I must clear that up initially, Grace. They don't necessarily dry up every year. This is is a drier year than normal, and could contribute to the fact that this year there may not be any catfish. Well, it may dry up. And they're transported by the various networks of rivers. When there are rains during our rainy season, it can be so I've just spotted a bird here that I'd like to show you. You got it there, Jandre? Oh no! I think it was a little sparrowhawk, bird we don't see very often. And I couldn't be certain, I didn't even get a chance to get my binoculars up to it, and it's gone now. So, sorry Grace, back to your question. Where do they come from? They'll come from the other bigger water sources that overflow during the rainy season, and eggs will be transported down these little tributaries into the other water holes. So often in the very small streams that run through the dry riverbeds, which are usually dry, but during the summer months they will fill up temporarily, you can often find little catfish. And Anne would like to know, how long or how far can they move overland to other water sources? They do have the ability to stay alive for, I think it's over 12 hours out of water. And that obviously is incredible in itself. So they can slither themselves from one drying water source to another. But in their case, it's going to be kilometers before they find a decent place to find a new home, so it's not likely that they would make it to be able to slither and squirm that far. Mavis is now asking and mentioning that she's quite surprised that we don't pump water into the waterholes, and we do some, or the management here at Juma decide to pump into certain waterholes. There's a little waterhole in front of the Galago camp here at Juma. There's two camps, one called Galago and one called Vuyatela. The camp in front of Vuyatela has a small pond that is pumped into, and so does the Galago camp that's right next to one another. So water can be pumped into the various waterholes, but I guess during the drier months you don't necessarily want animals congregating and staying in any given area for too long, because they can cause extreme damage to it. So that is the one negative side of putting in artificial waterholes, is that it does slightly tweak the system. But what we do have to remember is that there are fences around every side of the Kruger National Park. Even though it's hundreds of square kilometers large, it is fenced in, so there is already that external pressure from the fences and the humans, and therefore it's kind of accepted and makes sense to be able to do a small amount of further tweaking by putting in waterholes in certain areas. But that is a huge debate that we are not going to get into. We are rather going to go and find Kunuma. It should be in the next 3 minutes that we have found him. That is my prediction. And for those of you who have joined for the first time this afternoon, you will learn very quickly that most of my predictions are wrong. But I still like to try and predict things. But 99% of the time, the prediction does not come through. It keeps me excited though. I just keep lying to myself, convincing myself that we will find something, and eventually sometimes we do. Oh, it is definitely leopard o'clock. I can feel it in me. Where are you hiding? Places to look now while we creep along here. Up on termite mounds, in the trees, wherever you're feeling lucky. And you're not only looking for a spotted cat, you're looking for just a strange shape, the ears, the outlines of the ears, a tail. Not necessarily looking for a big leopard in the middle of the road. We approached from our left-hand side this morning. The dam is directly in front of us. And he was slinking through this area. The last tracks we actually had of him was just behind us. And then he eventually popped out at the waterhole. Speaking of tracking, Joyce, good evening. She would like to know whether we ever track hippos, and we would have to come out at night to do that. That's when they're predominantly feeding, Joyce. They're nocturnal grazers. Because we don't spend much time out after dark, that is why we don't get to show you them very often. Also because we don't have any big enough water holes here on Juma to sustain hippos during the dry season. During summer we do get to see them, but always in the water, sadly. Oh, I lie. Occasionally we've had a few brief glimpses of them out of the water, but probably a handful in all the time that I've been here. So it is possible, and come summer rains, there will be more hippo on Djuma. We often only get to show you their ears, nostrils and eyes, as that's all that really protrudes out the water. We could possibly get you some long distance visuals in the coming days from Sydney's Dam, which is just north of our boundary, but we can see them. And during the winter months, it's not uncommon for them to come out and sun themselves during the day for a few hours when the sun isn't as harsh as it is in the summer months, because their skin is quite sensitive, so that's why they spend all day in the cool water to protect their skin. Okay, well, this is the test of time. We are approaching. Come on, Kunyuma, please. Sorry about the black screen there, I'm not sure what happened. Little technical glitch. Come on. Well, no immediate sign of him. But what Jandre and myself need to do is just stop here and listen for a few moments. Maybe Mother Nature will tell us what is going on, and you might want to enjoy a few beautiful shots of the setting sun once Jandre is leveled off the camera. Look at that. A magical, magical sunsets, and that's the beauty of being out on safari. You don't find the leopards every day and what you may be looking for every day, but the sun sets every evening, and this in itself is an absolute pleasure to share with you. I'm sure a lot of you will be deep into the night or early in the morning or in a rainy place, but at least you get these beautiful images of a setting sun over Africa. Okay, well, we're going to send you back to Jamie, and we are not going to move a muscle for at least the next 10 minutes or so in the hope that Kunyuma reveals himself. See you later.
So guys, from Scott's sunset to mine, aren't the colors of the sky absolutely stunning this evening? And there does seem to be quite a large fire up to the north of us. I didn't see it from here, but I did see it when I drove to the other camp that we're staying at in Manyuleti. So there was a lot of smoke in the air, and that's just what's creating these spectacular colors as always. The winter sunsets do tend to be really, truly beautiful. And we're just getting the last few. So, for the time that you were with Scott, waiting in anticipation for Kunyuma to come out, I've actually just been down to check I've been down to check a hyena den that I have heard has been used in the past. And the reason I did that was just because of those reports that there was a potential that the cubs had been moved from the current den to a different one in this area. So I went down to just check it. There are lots and lots of fresh hyena tracks, but the den itself, some of the holes are still a little bit filled with sand. They haven't been freshly excavated. and there's no other fresh signs of hyenas, just a lot of old latrines where they've deposited their dung or their scat around just to mark it out as one of their den sites. So no luck there, but I am going to return to our usual hyena den just to see if there's any action now that it's cooled down a little bit and we're losing the last few rays of the sun. I'm still feeling very warm. I think it's probably one of the first evenings where I've made it to this time of day without even feeling the need to put on a jacket or a jumper. I'm feeling still quite toasty. So let's see what we can find at that hyena den. We're not too far away from it. In a straight line, we're probably maybe, 700 meters or so. And I have found that with spotted hyenas, when they do move their den sites, they tend to do so not too far away. Obviously, there's exceptions to every rule, but when I have followed hyenas and looked at their new den sites, they move to fairly regularly used ones and usually not too far from the previously active one. So we do know at least where to start looking if they have moved. And for those of you who are still wondering about why spotted hyenas do move their dens, maybe you're just joining us for the first time, when the animals are there for a collected period of time, the den starts to build up parasites and attract flies, especially when they have got bones or something like that around the den, remains of an old carcass perhaps. It does just build up the parasite load and make it a little bit uncomfortable for them to live and not very sanitary. So then they move dens to the next site and the next site and so on. I have to actually keep remembering that I'm driving Jigger and not Wendy. And one of them is better to drive in low range than the other. Now is the perfect time of day for things to start moving after they've been resting up for the heat of the day in the shade. All of the spotted hyena den sites that I have visited, all of them have been in termite mounds, the ones that I've seen, and that is fairly common for spotted hyena. Whereas with brown hyena, they do use termite mounds, and I have found one or two like that, but they'll find nice rocky areas that make small caves, and they will use those to den as well. It just makes it a little bit safer and a bit more hidden for them, because they're not as sociable as the spotted hyenas, so they don't have as many clan members to protect them. So a little bit earlier on, when we were trying to look at the brown-headed parrot, we were just talking about the fact that they are an indigenous species to the Sabi Sands. We were talking about the other species that we might be seeing just up and around this area. And Pamela actually has a question from when we were talking about those parrots. She would like to know if we get the African grey parrot in the Sabi Sands. And we don't. They are indigenous more towards the central jungle areas of Africa. We don't get them in southern Africa. And they have been widely used as pet species in the past because they are truly beautiful. They've got that gorgeous grey colour. And parrots are incredibly intelligent birds, and the African grey can live for a good couple of decades. Just looking at all of these tracks in the road, I think they are all hyena, so they are definitely regularly using this area around the den. But in answer to your question, Pamela, no, not in the Sabi Sands. It's more up towards the central areas of Africa that you find the African grey parrot. It's a much larger, much longer lived species than the ones that we get here. And we also get a couple of species of parakeet and lovebirds that were introduced as people's pets originally and have escaped from various aviaries or bird cages. And they've actually discovered that some of the cities suit them perfectly and have established feral populations in and around. And we've got a couple that come through my garden in Johannesburg every now and again. And it's always difficult because you know that they are competing with the naturally occurring birds. But they've been in this area, or at least in the Johannesburg area, for many, many, many years and many generations. Up a bit. I was also keeping an eye out for tracks of shadow in Sindile, but I think they are still across from our boundary where we left them yesterday afternoon. Oh, little steenbokkie. Sorry, gave you a bit of a fright there. Dashing off and just demonstrating that very typical running technique that steenbok do show. So they will dash away from the threat and then immediately stop and rely a little bit on their camouflage to hide them. Definitely one of my favorites to see. And there you can see, as Andrew zooms out a little bit, that if that steenbok was to stay still, ooh, did you guys hear that bird that was whistling there? That was a red-crested korhaan, and it is starting to get to their mating season, so we will be hearing that call more and more often. And they're one of my favorite birds to observe because they are what is known as the suicide bird, and that's because in their mating display, the female flies up high and then closes its wings and drops towards the ground, the male. And the females, the sort of longer the male falls and the higher he goes, the more attractive they find this particular display of foolishness. Hello, little steenbokkie. Nice and relaxed. And it very often occurs with antelope that they'll stop and watch you go by. And it's only when you stop and you look at them and you show that your attention is focused on them that they disappeared. While we've got this beautiful view of the little steenbok, we've got this really cool, amazing update from Debbie. Welcome to the Sunset Safari. And Debbie tells me that her African grey parrot that we were talking about a little bit earlier, she has a pet African grey that is 20 years old and has actually learned to imitate the call of the pearl-spotted owlet, which is a sort of series of ascending whistles and then a rapidly descending whistle. And that's really very cool, and that her parrot has just learned this call while she's been watching the WildEarth Safaris. So really, really awesome information from Debbie there. And it's amazing what clever little mimics those birds can be. And here we have the moon right at the almost full. I'm not entirely sure what the date is, but I know that the moon is full on the 31st.
It's tomorrow.
Is it tomorrow? Thank you. I don't really ever know what the date is, and quite often I don't know what the month is. So the next full moon is tomorrow. We can see the moon is nearly full and looking truly spectacular in that dark sky. And it is actually a blue moon this month, so we've had 2 full moons in July. Beautiful. So guys, I'm sure you've been wondering what's been happening with Scott and Kunuma, and I'm sure everybody is very keen to find out. So I'm going to take this opportunity just to double check again so that we know for sure what's happening at the hyena den, and I will be back with you guys in just a few moments.
Welcome back, everyone. Sadly, no updates from the Buffelshoek waterhole. There's been some bird song, a beautiful sunset, but no sign of Kunuma yet. There's a fly on my forehead, and other than that, I think Jean-Andre is going to go for it. Here he comes. And these flies, you have to learn to embrace them. We don't allow them onto our mouths though. That is naughty fly behavior. We just allow them up on the forehead. They're eating my excess brain matter, which is oozing through my skin. And other than that, not much to report. The flies have been great company, but sadly the leopard has not come to the party yet. There still is a chance that at any moment he could come down and have a drink. We've positioned ourselves so that we can see every single part of the waterhole. As where we were positioned earlier, you cannot see all the different angles and inlets. So if he was to come here, there would be no chance we could miss him. He could, of course, be kilometers away from here already by now, in search of food and other water elsewhere. But we'll just give it a few more moments and hope that either he comes down or something else could come down. Who knows, another leopard. That's where we saw him up in that corner, and he headed away from the waterhole. And I'm guessing that's where he would return if he did. Maybe we should actually go on a short drive around. I'm getting a little bit restless. So we'll drive around the block once, maybe we'll find him nearby. Craig, sadly no updates. I've spent the last 10 minutes at Buffelshoek and he hasn't popped out. I'm just going to drive around the block now. Well, we've just got a funny comment through from Lisa Osborne, and glad to know you're watching and very happy you sent this comment through. Lisa's joking, saying it looks like we're only going to find him 5 minutes before the end of broadcast again. And you know what, as funny as that would be, it would be better than nothing. I would bank that. And a lot of the viewers, I guess, wouldn't have seen him this morning, so it'll be great if we get to show him to you. For those who couldn't make the sunrise show. Oh. And we've just got a beautiful gap, I think. Jean-Andre's got a slightly different position to me, but the moon that Andrew was showing you earlier is rising up between a gap in this marula tree. There may be a few little branches in the foreground. But what a pretty scene. It's not quite full moon yet, I don't think. The Marula moon. And tomorrow it will be full moon, so that's something to look forward to. One thing that we like to do when the moon is full is go on night drives, and not really looking for anything, because it would be a shame to shine spotlights around and vehicle lights when you can drive just using the light from the moon. It's so bright that it casts shadows from the trees. So maybe after dinner tonight we'll head out on a little full moon or close to full moon safari. Magic. You may be able to faintly hear a woodpecker tapping. We're going to continue now. So just to keep everyone in the loop, he was last seen, Kunyuma, this male leopard who we're looking for now, he was last seen heading parallel to this road to the left of us, up a small riverbed. So it could be anywhere here. We have fine-combed this area this afternoon, but leopards are incredibly good at hiding from us when they want to. Or even when they don't want to, they just lie there and watch us walk past and don't really realize what we're doing, and they go back to sleep. Which is what could have happened this afternoon. He could well have seen either myself or Jamie. We were both here fine combing. But neither of us came up with one single track. Which is a little bit worrying, because there are lots of paths and trails that he could have used and would be more likely to use than just missioning through the bush on random paths, which requires more negotiating. What would be nice is if we found him now in a marula tree, lying down, and then we get the moon in the background. How's that for a plan? That's the next plan. So we're going to scrap the drinking plan. That moment has come and gone. It would have been nice, but I think it'll be better to find him in a tree with the moon rising in the background. Come on! I haven't seen anything. I just thought I heard a squirrel alarm calling. But I didn't. Can you hear Drongo calling off to the side? A few woodpeckers, in all likelihood the bearded woodpeckers, who drum on hollow branches to communicate with one another for territories. Rattling cisticolas just let off one or two calls. Let's just go and have a look there. Pay tribute to the alarming cisticola. What could they have seen? We will rescue them, though, from whatever danger is there. It was the same little birds that actually led us to Kunyuma this morning, or helped lead us to him. They let off a few calls just about in here somewhere. And imagine if Kunyuma pops up. I'll be eternally indebted to these little cisticolas. No. testiculars were playing with us or had just seen something very small, too small for us to see. On the back of the head there, you may have seen a refreshing slap from a bush willow. The worst thing that can happen to you when driving on, branches getting flung into your face is one thing, but the worst that I've experienced is small, not branches still attached to trees that can fling back and hit you. Loose branches about this long that lie a little bit onto the road. So if you drive over one corner of them, it catapults up underneath the wheels into the vehicle. Once it hit me so hard in the head, almost like a rake, I guess, standing on the end of a rake. One hit me so hard in the head that I just felt blood gushing down immediately down my face. But I wasn't even worried about myself because it had continued with such velocity and wedged itself. It somehow flew between the two front rows of guests. There were 6 guests in the vehicle, 2 on each row. It made it through the first 2 rows and wedged itself between the guest's camera, which was on his lap, and the funny little arm rail. Bing! At speed after walloping me on the head. So they got away okay. Another time my guest's camera bore the brunt of it. It was a brand new camera that broke as the log hit it. Not very popular guide that day. So those are my 2 worst log encounters. The one that you've just experienced was not even an issue compared to what has gone on in the past. Either we go left up ahead or we go right. What I'm going to do initially is just scan with my binoculars both sides. Well, nothing down to the left and also nothing to the right, so I'm not sure where to go. The first person to say left or right on Twitter or email will determine the next leg of this adventure. So send through where you want to go, left or right. We've got a 50-50 chance of finding this leopard either way. And happy to hear that Katrina feels that none of the guides here on Safari Live are quite normal or quite okay upstairs, I guess, and that it is making for pleasant James, I'm sure for a lot of you will have you in stitches, but we have got him 24 hours a day, and I think we all actually owe him because we laugh so much that it's almost a form of exercise when he's around. He really is a character. And having Jamie on the team as well, it's been great to get to know her. She's got a lot to contribute to the team, so we're all one big happy camp at the moment. And look forward to hopefully inviting and introducing more crew to the team here as the product grows and diversifies. Well, I hope somebody is sending through a request as to whether we should go left or right. We're still waiting here, and I'm not going anywhere until somebody tells me what to do. I'm sure there's going to be an overwhelming rush of requests, but sadly we're only going to be able to listen to the first persons. And who will it be? Here they come. Okay. Well, Jill Robertson, well done for pulling the trigger first. And thank you very much for helping me. I was really in a pickle there. And without your help, we would have been stuck here for the rest of the night. But now, we can head back. I believe, Brian, you were also in very close contention to steer us on. And you also said right. So Brian and Jill, you were the first two to send through your requests. And here we go. We've turned right. There we go. Come on, Kunyuma. I'm going to up the speed a little bit now because it's fairly open. And I'm confident that we'll be able to scan fairly decently. Resident Quran that I can hear it's calling. I wonder if we're going to be able to find it for you. It was calling. Here it goes again. And soon in the coming months, we're going to be able to see these birds doing their crazy mating flight displays, where they'll fly straight up into the air and then close their wings and tumble down and put out their landing gear right at the last moment as they swoop to safety. And the ladies really enjoy that little show that the men put on for them. Let me find it in the book for you. The mammals book probably won't work too well for that, but if we get the bird book out, we should be able to find you fairly quickly the bird responsible for making that call. Here it goes again. And it's the red-crested Korhaan. And I'm told that one of you would have liked to have seen the red-crested Korhaan in the book a little bit earlier. It was Julia, I think. And, well, hasn't that worked out well, Julia? You get to hear the red-crested Korhaan, and now you get to see it in the book. I can hear another one now calling off in the distance. So the males are already beginning to start heating up, trying to get their little territorial patch that they can then try and lure in some females. Okay, well, Brian and Jill, thank you very much for bringing us to the red-crested Korhaan. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't have been able to hear it, and I also wouldn't have been able to show Julia in the book. So thanks very much for your help there. We're going to send you across to Jamie now and continue the never-ending search for the elusive Kunyuma.
So, welcome back, guys. And I'm afraid to say that I did go back to the hyena den, and there is absolutely no activity there at the moment. So I am starting to seriously question if they have moved, and it is a possibility. If they have moved, as I said, hopefully they haven't gone too far, and we'll be able to find them again fairly quickly. But it could also just be that Mom is fairly far away at a kill that's a couple of kilometers away, and she might be just gone for a while and be back again soon. So at the moment I'm just checking one more time for Shadow and Sandile, just checking along this cut line for tracks. And I know that Scott mentioned to me that he had a theory about Karula, that she was going to start pushing back to the western part of her territory, just because Shadow has been spending so much time there. And she just might want to re-establish and remind her daughter that she is the boss. And it's just at that time of day. I put my jumper on because I was feeling really cold, because I was driving a little bit faster than this. And now I regret that decision. I can't believe how warm today has been. It's so exciting. And it's just at that time of day where with the spotlight doesn't quite help you out. It's right at that turning point. So right now I'm on the southern boundary, just having a look around for whatever we can see, especially since Shadow and Sandile love this area so much. And it has been very, very quiet on the radio today. And one thing I would like to do when I reach this corner is just contact the guides on Arathusa, because we do use a different channel radio for that side of operations, and I'd like to just get an update from them for what happened this afternoon or this morning, so that tomorrow morning we can have a look around on that side. So I'm just going to switch radio channels. I'll contact them when I'm a bit closer. And it's amazing the temperature difference from the low level that I came out onto this road in, which was much, much cooler. And we just went through such a raise in temperature as we went up this hill. And obviously that's because cold air is more dense and it sinks and hot air rises, as with any kind of situation. Which means that first thing on those chilly, chilly winter mornings, you really, really don't want to be driving through a dip. Put my hat, I no longer need it. And what a beautiful skyline that is. So a little bit earlier we were looking at the full moon that is coming soon, which will be tomorrow, and Janet tells me that it is the last blue moon. So when there are 2 full moons in a month, it'll be the last full moon until 2018. So thanks for that, Janet. That's definitely special, and I'm very glad that I'm working and living in an environment. Oh, there's my turn. Sorry, I nearly missed it. I was so busy talking. Really cool that I'm going to get to be able to see it, unless by some very strange cold front pushes in and puts clouds over it. But I'm sure it's not going to happen. I think it's going to stay nice and clear like this, and we'll be able to see the last blue moon for the next 3 years. And I'm sure most of you will be joining us for that as well, and we'll definitely be showing you a beautiful shot of tomorrow's full moon. So Joyce has pointed out what I'm sure many of you have noticed, and that's of course the fact that it has been a very, very quiet drive this afternoon on the Sunset Safari, and Joyce would like to know if there's any reason that I think this might be the case. And the answer to that question is I don't think that there's any particular reason. I think that the heat might have kept the animals hiding in the shade quite a bit more, so that could be one possible factor. And the lions, sort of the really big hairies and scaries, the lions are all off Djuma, and Kunuma was not making himself known to us. And as for the rest of it, there were not many guides operating on Djuma this afternoon. They were in Buffelshoek with the Birmingham boys, so they haven't been around to check all of the roads. And obviously, statistically, the more people you have around and about, the more likely you are to find tracks. So, unfortunately today, Scott and I just didn't find that many tracks that were worth following up on. I did see some old leopard tracks, but nothing fresh. And I'm certain that the individual that left those tracks will have moved out of the area by now. So just a matter of the animals moving out and about and around. And when you think of the fact that this area is so open to Kruger, and it is such an enormous area in which to move around in, it's no surprises that every now and again you get a quiet drive, and there's something that you experience fairly regularly as a field guide or a safari guide. Quiet days do happen. And the awesome thing about quiet days is that it makes you appreciate the action all that much more. Sorry, Nightjar. Just had a little nightjar in the road that I didn't want to drive over. Guys, I am definitely very, very excited about this evenings in the bush, and I always try and make sure I can go outside late at night, or well, my bedtime's pretty early, but as late as I can possibly stay up and go and sit somewhere where there's no light pollution and just have a look at what I can see. And it's amazing how much light the full moon brings. And Curious One has also raised that point and saying that full moon is a perfect time to be watching the Djuma Dam camera, and it's for that exact reason, and that's a very, very good point. So for those of you who are joining us for the first time and might be new to this whole experience, once this live safari is over, I would definitely suggest that you go and visit the website and look for the Djuma webcam that is up 24 hours at the waterhole. And especially tonight and tomorrow night, you're going to be able to see all kinds of amazing things coming through. Sorry guys, just lost my earpiece. Multitasking a bit too much. Hey, stay in. all that talk about pangolins earlier has made me desperate to find one for you guys. Unfortunately, they are very few and far between and very, very secretive animals. But that would be so cool. So exciting. I saw something reflecting off the layer. I might have been mistaken. No, I think it is my imagination. Something similar to what happened to Scott and his imaginary leopard carcass up in a tree. It's amazing how your brain can start to see things when you are looking for something specific. And I know that I always tell the guests that I'm with when I'm taking them out on drive, never to look for a specific animal. So always make sure that you keep your mind open to just looking, rather than say looking for just the leopards or just the lions, because your brain starts to fill in the dots and you start making out every log to be that particular animal. And I found that 99% of the time, if you are saying I think about, if you're saying I think I saw something, you aren't really. And if you know, your brain will tell you almost immediately that you definitely saw something, if that makes sense. So you've got to trust in your brain to really know the difference. I just want to hop on the radio quickly. I am picking up the Arethusa channel and I did hear some communication from them. Yeah, good evening stations, it's Jamie from WildEarth. I was wondering if there were any updates from that side for me to follow up on tomorrow morning. Standing by. Copy that, thank you very much. I will be working around that cut line area tomorrow. Okay, I'm a little bit far from Arethusa, so the comms are not startlingly brilliant. I did drive a little bit too far, I forgot I was meant to call them. But Shadow and Sindile, for those of you who were watching yesterday afternoon, they are still just a little bit north of the Arethusa boundary. So almost exactly where we saw them disappear yesterday afternoon. I couldn't hear clearly if there was a kill with them or not. I do know, remember we were discussing maybe the possibility that Shadow was leading Sindile to a kill, because she did look very much on a mission. So she's still very, very close to that area we saw her disappear in, and we'll definitely be starting there tomorrow for the sunrise safari. But now we've got some nighttime critters to find. I seriously regret this decision to put my jumper on. So guys, as Joyce pointed out, and I'm sure you've realized, it has been a really quiet afternoon. But in terms of the day, it's actually been really, really exciting. So seeing Kunuma for me for the very first time working at Djuma was a real excitement. And it's made all the more exciting because Scott and I were tracking him from first thing this morning. And then we did actually manage to find him. So quite an exciting day from that perspective. And I do hope he makes an appearance again because I've heard so many stories about him. So definitely not a boring day from my side. And this afternoon was a great opportunity to just chat a little bit more and get to see some of the smaller things and some interesting birds and even some vanishing parrots. So not too bad an afternoon, a great sunset safari as always. The bush always has something exciting to offer, even if it's not big and hairy and scary. So tomorrow, sunrise safari. I do hope you guys will all be joining us. I'm sure it's going to be really exciting. We're going to head off to Arathusa immediately and check for Shadow and Sindile. So guys, as always, a big thank you to all of the viewers, and thank you especially today for answering all my questions, and to Andrew for his great camera work, and to all the guys in FC. But always, as most importantly, a big thank you to you guys, and I will see you tomorrow morning for the sunrise safari. Bye guys, have a great day or a great evening wherever you are in the world.
Welcome back, everyone, and what a magical evening it is here. Got the full moon, well, nearly full moon rising up in the east behind us, and well, it's been an entertaining afternoon. We haven't necessarily found what we set out to look for, but we did find a few other interesting animals along the way. I guess some of the highlights for me was actually the birds that we got to see. The sighting that we had of those 2 Bateleur eagles in the perfect sunshine close up was a great view, and Gendre's best view he's had so far. So happy that we got to do that, as well as also share some new birds with a lot of you, the common scimitar, the southern black tits. So we've got a few new birds identified, and it'll guess it's always something progressing, and we will always be catering for the new viewers, and a lot of the old viewers will, like most safari goers, understand that you've got to start somewhere. So happy to know that a lot of you are taking up these bird lists and getting them going, and it's a big pleasure to have you all on board with us every day. And if it is the first time that you've joined, I hope you've enjoyed it. It's worth tuning in again, because it is really wonderful when we do find some of the big cats or high profile animals, which we didn't get this afternoon, but you did still get to see some good fun on safari. A big thanks for following us, and a big thanks to Gendre on camera, as well as to Nikki and Louise in the final control room. We're going to leave you for the last minute just to examine the moon and enjoy whatever sounds we may hear. We'll see you all on the next safari. Oh, I forgot to say Brent's back. How could I have forgotten? So good to have Brent back in camp, and he'll probably be out on drive at some stage tomorrow, and I'm sure a lot of you are going to be happy to see his face again. He's had a good trip up in Zambia that he'll tell you all about. Anyway, enjoy the moon and look forward to seeing Brent on the next drive.